Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's just a four, at least to me, it's just 4 o'clock. We're going to wait just a minute or two. We still have a few people joining us, and then we'll get started with today's program on preserving herbs made easy. I'm going to go over all this in a moment, but we are recording this session, so if you want to turn your camera off, that's certainly your prerogative to do so. I'll give people just a few more seconds, and then we're just going to go ahead and get started with our program. We want to be respectful of your time. See a few names in the attendee list that I believe I've seen at some of our other programs. So welcome back. Nice of you to join us again. I think that's the best compliment we can receive with the programs that we offer is when you come back for more. So we certainly appreciate that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So again, my name is, not again, I guess the first time. My name's Paige Weiskirch. I'm a master food preserver, and I'll be your MC for today. And this is Preserving Herbs Made Simple. So before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. Again, this program is being recorded and a copy of the slide deck, and there'll be a class handout with, today we don't really have recipes as much as procedures, but those processes will have a handout available for you for those of you sent up that'll be emailed to you after the class. Or I should, not right after the class, but you'll get it the next day or so. Again, my name is Paige. I'll be your MC. Our Q&A moderator is Mary. She's her name, it says Q&A. She'll be answering your questions, or I shouldn't say she'll be forwarding your questions or keeping them moving forward and organized just for our panel. So thank you. And then our panelists today are Renee, Earl, and Mika. And we are all, again, UC Master Food Preservers with the online delivery program. So a couple things, please keep your mics muted when you're not speaking. And then if you have, we'll have a period where we'll open things up for live questions, and you're welcome to just unmute and speak, or if you'd like to raise your Zoom hand, if you go to the bottom of your screen, you should see a button that says react with a heart. And in that, there is a raise hand option. If you don't see that, or pardon me, we'll go to the here. And then the other option you have is the Q&A. You can also type your questions into the Q&A, and Mary will make sure that those questions get to our panel. And if you're not seeing the Q&A feature, you may have to select the 3 dots in a circle button, which is more, and then you'll have other options which will include the Q&A. So you can go there and type in your questions if you don't want to raise your hand. So there you go. And again, when we do our open discussion part portions, you're welcome also just to unmute and speak up. A little bit about who we are. The UC MFP Online Delivery Program is a community outreach, online-based, grant-funded volunteer program within the UC Division of Ag and Natural Resources. And our goal is to provide up-to-date research-based information on food safety and food preservation. To keep Californians safe and well, we try to use culturally appropriate research-based practices to safely preserve food in the home, and help you reduce food waste, increase food security, and then just provide, fun ways to use the food that you grow and that you purchase. To make it clear, any views, thoughts, products that you see us use, these are strictly those of the speakers and are not should be not considered opinions of the University of California. UC does not endorse or oppose any specific organization, product, or service. So any views and opinions that you hear are our own. So let's jump in. Today's program. So we're going to go through, we have 3 speakers today and 3 offerings. The first is going to be Freezing Herbs Multiple Ways with Renee. And then Earl is going to tell us all about making herb vinegar, which I can tell you from experience is delicious. And then finally, Mika is going to do a live demonstration and show you how easy it can be to dehydrate herbs at home. So without any further ado, Renee.
All right, thank you very much, Paige, for introducing me, and thanks everyone for joining this session.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Um, yep, let's go to the next slide, please. Just before we talk about herbs, let's talk about our good old friend garlic. Garlic, we know it's not an herb, but it's important for us to kind of spend a few seconds to talk about it. We know it's a vegetable, and it's commonly people commonly think that it's an herb because of its strong aroma, strong flavor, aromatic qualities. But I just want to make sure we address garlic and talk about it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so garlic isn't is not an it, garlic is not an herb. However, the topic of garlic is, storage typically arise in this kind of form. Yes, you can freeze garlic. You can freeze the cloves, chop garlic, but just keep in mind, when you're freezing it, it does preserve the flavor, but the texture does change the texture of garlic. It kind of makes it a little bit softer. Also, keep in mind, do not store garlic in oil at room temperature. According to the National Center for Home Food Preservation, mixtures of garlic and oil are susceptible to botulism if stored at room temperature. Right? So just keep in mind garlic is a low acid vegetable, and when stored improperly in oil, Clostridium botulinum bacteria can grow and produce fatal toxins, and we just want to make sure we're careful of that process. So next slide, please. So for this series here, we're going to talk about three nice herbs that we can all enjoy. For this session, we'll talk about these three herbs. We'll talk about different ways of freezing these herbs and different use cases when we freeze these herbs. So next slide, please. So let's talk cilantro first, one of my favorites. Cilantro, here in California, it grows. We have it in abundance. At times, you can catch cilantro on a really good sale. You can get six for $1, or you can sometimes, other times, there's no sale on cilantro and it's $1.49 for one bundle. So, I mean, usually when I get these things for a good price, um, I want to try to harvest the cilantro. I want to make sure I can save it for future use. So what I typically would try to do is kind of wet the cilantro, pat it dry. Next slide, please. And after a good washing of the cilantro, I usually try to put it in a tray of ice. Once I have it in this tray of ice, and you can put in as much cilantro in each compartment as you desire. It's just up to you. I mean, me, I really like cilantro, so I usually pack it really heavily. And you can pour some olive oil over the cilantro and you basically just place it inside of a freezer. Next slide, please. Once you place it inside of a freezer, you've preserved it. You've preserved the sweet smell, the beautiful taste of cilantro, and now you have it for future use. You have it in your freezer whenever you're getting ready to make something. You can easily have remove the cilantro. So once frozen, remove the ice from the freezer, right? Place the frozen cilantro into freezer bags. And of course, you want to always remove the excess air from the bag. I typically try to use a straw to remove the excess air from the bag. Some people will use the water method where basically you have this freezer bag, you fill up your sink with water and you slowly put the plastic bag into the water, and then the excess air slowly removes from there. Next slide, please. Right. So once you have this product, you can enjoy it in so many different ways. Taco filling is one good way of enjoying it. Basically, what you can do is as you're preparing your before you have your meat seasoned off, you just take out one or two ice cubes, put it inside of your skillet, add some garlic to it, and you add your meat to it, and there you are. It's good, set, ready to go for you. You can also enjoy it in Mexican rice as you're doing your rice. You drop this inside of it with a little bit of water, and you're set. You can do it with chicken tortilla soup. I usually like to do it with chicken broths. I mean, with chicken soup myself. It's really, really tasty. And I like to also do it early morning if I want to do a quick scrambled egg. I'll use just one cube of ice, throw in my 2 eggs, scramble it up really quickly, and it's something, you have something that's really tasty. So this is one simple, easy use case for cilantro. And also keep in mind, this can be used, this product, what we just described can be used for pretty much any leafy green herb. Next slide, please. So the next one I want to talk about is mint. I am just a mint fan. I'm a lover of mint, and it it's always at the supermarket. I grow it myself. It grows in abundance. Um, so basically, if you have mint, you can either harvest it from your backyard or harvest it from the grocery store. What you want to do to preserve it, you want to go ahead and wash the mint really well again in cold water. Pat the mint dry, make sure it's dry, and again, fill it till your heart desire inside of a nice ice tray. I like to use the long ice tray because it gives the whole mint a sleek look, and you'll see it on the next few slides here. So basically, you fill the mint in with the ice trays, and you just pour some ice over it. And I tell you, you'll once you add it to your water or some other drinks that I'll describe later here, you'll really enjoy it. Next slide, please. So once you get your ice tray, you put that inside of the freezer. It's frozen. Take it out from the ice tray. You slide it inside of a freezer bag, a Ziploc a freezer bag. Again, you always want to try to remove the excess air from there. Once you remove your excess air, you can continue to repeat this process if you're constantly getting a good harvest of mint.
Followed by pound.
If you're getting a good harvest of mint, or if you have a lot of mint that you purchase from the grocery store, you can constantly repeat this process and just keep filling it in the bags. Next slide, please. Of course, make sure you label it with a date as well. And what I usually use it for is I love to put it inside of water. Whenever you see me with my little flask, I usually will have water inside of it with mint. Um, I know other people will use it inside of iced tea. It's just you can use it in soups. You can use it in pretty much anything. You can just use it when it's a hot day. Just put the ice in your mouth and then just have the ice and the mint just melt away in your mouth. And it's something that's so tasty, so easy for us to do. It's an easy way of preserving. You don't need to purchase anything extra because we all have all of these ice trays and this mint just readily available for us. And the next slide, please. And then my final one I want to go over here to preserving is basil. Basil is one of those things that there are times that you just have it in abundance in the grocery stores, and other times it's just so difficult to find. And when you do find it, it's kind of costly. So usually when I find it in abundance at the grocery store, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and purchase what they have there, and I usually try my best to preserve as much of it as possible. And this is just a simple way of preserving basil. I purchase it, wash them really well with cold water. And the key here is you want to separate, after you pat these guys down, you want to separate the basil inside of like a nice cookie tray. Remove the leaves and make sure that they're not touching. You don't want these things to touch. That way you can avoid any kind of clumping. Right, and you'll just put it in the freezer and you'll repeat this process over and over again, but you'll only put it in the freezer for 2 hours initially on this cookie tray. Because what you're trying to do here is you're trying to capture the freshness. You're trying to seal in that freshness with the little bit of liquid that's on that basil. And then next slide, please. Once you had it in the freezer for the 2 hours, you want to easily just put it in the Ziploc bag. Once you place it in the Ziploc bag, after it's frozen, you'll realize that it's not going to clump together anymore, because it's already frozen. And of course, you repeat this process over and over again, and you just simply put it back in the Ziploc bag. Once you're done with the whole process, put it back in the freezer. And you can have so many different use cases for this one. You can toss this into like rice. You can toss this on top of your pizza. You can toss this into any kind of sauteed dishes that you have. You can toss it into soups. this is just something, again, that's what I'm trying to present here. Just 3 easy ways to help to preserve herbs that you can use. And when you're preserving it, you're locking in the flavor, locking in the freshness, even though it's not the season for that herb in your specific area, you still have a fresh product because you preserved it. And next slide, please, Paige. And that's all I have. And I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Earl, who's
Actually,
going to
before
present
we
on.
move on to Earl, does anybody have any questions about freezing herbs or anything that they? Do we have any questions, Mary? One thing I would share, if I love the freezing leafy herbs on freezer trays. I do that myself at home as a great way when I buy bunches of herbs and then have more than I needed for, maybe I bought it for a reason and then I'm left with a lot. And one of the things I like about it is that you don't need to defrost it to use it. So when I have a bag full of frozen basil leaves or parsley or never cilantro because cilantro is gross, but you can just grab it out, the portion you need and use it. You don't need to defrost it first. It defrosts in seconds, but you can just throw it right into your food. Oh, looks like we have a question. Kristen, I'm sorry.
Oh, just how long approximately do these last in the freezer?
Renee?
Yeah, typically these will last anywhere between 3 to 6 months. We generally try to recommend using between 3 to 4 months.
Thank you.
Great question.
We also have a question from Anne Renee in the Q&A. What happens if you freeze basil in water?
Yeah, if you freeze basil in water, it takes on a different mixture. I mean, when you freeze it in water, it comes out just like the a mint would, and you can definitely use it for any kind of soup that you're planning to use, any kind of rice that you're planning to use. So it is something that you can do, but I would definitely recommend removing the leaves from the stem, right, and just making sure that you're freezing the leaves only.
And we have one other question. Oh, looks like that got answered in the Q&A.
Excellent. All right. If we don't have any other questions, Earl is going to tell us about preserving the flavor of herbs in vinegar.
We have the
Ready,
first
Earl?
slide. Well, this is an interesting topic because we're not really preserving the whole leaf. We're actually working with aromas and flavors. So in this first slide, we're talking about basil infused in vinegar. And the art of preserving herbs focuses on capturing and maintaining their essential flavor through careful preparation and proper technique. Next slide. Let me just start by talking a little bit about vinegar, which I didn't include in this slide, but remember that vinegar usually starts with something like cider. Now, many, many years ago, one of the basic uses of apples was making cider. What happens with cider after you keep it for a while and in the presence of air, it turns into acetic acid or it turns into vinegar. And then you can actually go on and use that for many different things. Now, in this project, what we wanted to do, of course, is fresh cut basil, and it releases a strong aroma. In fact, many of you have probably experienced this. Usually I go into my garden every year and cut basil because this is the time of year. I think I'm almost done with it, but it's basil and tomatoes and making tomato sauce. So I think I'm almost done with that particular project. You want to make sure that you keep that vibrant flavor. And one way to do that is to avoid high temperatures in terms of the processing that you use. Next slide. Okay, so the basic thing that we did here was put basil in vinegar, and it starts out with, first of all, we need vinegar, and we had 5% acidity in our vinegar. It was apple cider vinegar. We used basil leaves, which I already explained, came out of the garden, and a glass container with a good, excuse me, tight-fitting lid. Then before you begin, you want to do some things like clean your work area and use good food handling practices. One thing that often people forget about is that cutting board oftentimes times has many different kinds of residues on it, and you want to make sure that you use a clean cutting board for your project. You need to wash the glass that you're going to use for the infusion, and you need to submit it or put it in boiling water for 10 minutes. That's the idea of killing bacteria or any kind of mold that's present. Then you want to wash and dry the basil and discard any damaged leaves. Okay, next slide. This is more or less the layout in my kitchen of the process I used. And you can see that on the one side, I have the basil on a cutting board. I have my Chinese chef knife there. I used that knife to sort of cut up or break up the basil because that would help me move flavors in the basil into the vinegar. And then I went ahead, put these cut leaves into my container, probably about half full, and then I added vinegar to it. Okay, next slide. And of course, once you get the vinegar added, you want to make sure that you seal this. You're going to be using this to extract the aromas and flavors out of the basil. You probably need to shake this or agitate it over a period of time. Now, the time that I used in my process on this project was only about 1 week, and I did get, as I thought, a significant basil note. But you may want to go longer, and probably if you go longer, you'll be able to pick up more of the flavors. You need to then go ahead and strain this after you've allowed it to steep, so to speak, for 1, say, to 3 weeks. And as you can see, I have there a little filter that's used oftentimes with loose tea leaves. And I just used that to make sure I can separate out the big pieces of basil. So once I took all the leaves out of it, then I went ahead and put that in another jar. And next slide. Here's the finished product over here. And you can see that I have a label on there that says it's basil infused alcohol. And it puts the date. I have the date on there is 9/4. So I did this just recently. You want to also, let me just make sure that I point out the importance of labeling, because oftentimes without labeling, we sometimes find in our refrigerator things that have been there for much longer than they should be. Now, shelf life on this, we'll probably get 3 to 4 months if we store this at room temperature, probably 6 to 8 months if we store it in a refrigerator. Now, this shelf life can sort of vary because it depends on various individuals in terms of the intensity that they like in this product. So in some cases, you may have be able to keep it maybe a little bit longer, or maybe you're going to go ahead and use it up within a short period of time. Also, you want to make sure that there's nothing in terms of discoloration in the vinegar, because that probably indicates that you've got some kind of a microbe contaminant. Next slide. Well, this process is not just for basil. Now, we've just been talking about basil, but it can be used for a number of different kinds of herbs. In fact, you could probably even go ahead and use combinations in the vinegar and maybe come up with some really unique flavors. Next slide. Okay, here's some possible uses, and I'm not going to go through all of these. Probably the most common is that salad dressing. So olive oil plus vinegar or your infused vinegar, putting those together and then applying them to the top of your salad. Making different kinds of sauces. Using this on grains is another possibility. And then possibly another great use would be in using it for a bread dip. And I'm sure that many of you have many other ideas where you use vinegar and you would like to have maybe a little bit different kind of flavor that comes off of the product. Next slide. Okay, are there any questions about our quick discussion on infused vinegar?
Yeah, Earl, there's a couple in the Q&A. Marilyn would like to know, doesn't vinegar overwhelm the basil flavor?
Well, that's what I thought. And I don't know if you can, I've got the jar right here. I guess I'm off to the side there. I can hold this up and here's the jar. But you can pick up the basil that comes off of that. Now, this is probably subjective because everybody has a different kind of sensitivity to aromas. And it may not be desirable for what you're after. Again, we only did about a week on this. You may want to go longer. Next question.
Okay, Terry would like to know, what are your thoughts about using balsamic vinegar?
Okay, well, remember we talked about vinegars before. Of course, balsamic comes from grapes. And then, of course, it's aged. So in other words, it starts out as grape juice. It actually goes through the process of producing acetic acid. Then they store that for a period of time. Then you have balsamic vinegar. I usually always have, in the past, I've used balsamic vinegar and olive oil for salad dressing. And I think it would be really great. Now, you could actually try this for yourself. You could actually find some great wine vinegars. And then you would probably have to age it. Now, that's the problem. You may not be able to age it very long to get the kind of balsamic vinegar you want. But you can actually go use it, go that direction and then see what happened with your product, your homemade balsamic vinegar.
If I
Next
could
question.
interject with that one, to add on to that, if you're asking about making an infused balsamic vinegar's acidity is wildly variable, and often also balsamic vinegars can be quite sweet because, again, it's a concentrated product.
Right.
So, we recommend using 5% acidity because we know from research that that level of acidity really stops the growth of most sort of unfriendly microbes. So we always recommend the use of 5% vinegar. And I would say that if you were going to do this experiment, you really must keep it refrigerated. You definitely want to, because the balsamic vinegar, part of what we like about it is the sweetness. And usually the sweetness comes with lower acidity. And it's that acidity that's really, if you notice, if you think commercially, you don't really see infused balsamic vinegars on the grocery store shelves, but you do see things like tarragon vinegar. And it's for the same reason, because from a microbe growth point of view, or more importantly, preventing it, you're probably not going to have the acidity that you wanted. If I was going to try to infuse a balsamic vinegar, I would not do it in an aged form like this, but rather maybe pour some in a pan, add your herbs, heat it, let it sit for 10 minutes on the stove and strain it. Get the herb flavor into the vinegar and then consume it immediately. If you were going to try it, definitely in the refrigerator.
Okay, and there's a few more, Earl. Manuela is asking about infusing herbs in olive oil.
Okay, well that is a separate topic. I would have to do some work and study that, but of course that is possible. And what you're doing there is making sure that you're taking away the kind of material that bacteria could grow on. And that is a little bit tricky because if your herb has a high level of moisture in it, that means that bacteria can grow in that. So I think that's a topic for maybe another class.
Okay. And then Tiffany is asking, do you store the vinegar at room temperature or the refrigerator while infusing in the dark or not in the dark?
While infusing, I just kept it at room temperature. Uh, Now, the other thing too is that when you store this, you want to try to avoid light because light will tend to break up or break down your flavor components.
Thank you. And I'm also going to put a link to the National Center for Home Food Preservation about
Great.
infused oil.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. And I think also just as a go back, Mary was kind enough to share in the chat a link regarding preserving garlic, also from the National Center for Home Food Preservation. So Renee spoke about that at the beginning of his presentation. And it's an important topic. So thanks for doing that. And I encourage you all to read it. All right. If there are no other questions, we're going to move on. I'm going to stop my share. And we're going to move on to Mika, who's going to do a live demonstration for you of how easy it can be to dry herbs at home. It is the best craft project ever.
All right. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mika. I'll be your master food preserver, and we're going to be talking about the paper bag dehydration method. It's actually my introduction into the world of food preservation. I was inspired because there was one time I went shopping and I left some basil in a paper bag, and then by the time I found it, it was dry, and I remember thinking, it smells like it's okay. And after Googling it and realizing that I could still use it, in fact, that it's like one of the oldest ways to preserve certain types of herbs and greens. That's when I just went crazy and really got into it. It was very cost effective. I was living in an apartment. I didn't have a patio, so I didn't have anywhere to hang dry anything. So this was a really good method for dipping my toes into food preservation without one, spending a lot of money, and two, not having a lot of time to commit to food preservation, but still getting to have fun. So with that said, today we're going to be talking about mint, and Renee and Earl, they showed you ways to preserve mint, and we're going to use just a nice friendly paper bag, and where I'm going to show you the process, and it's super easy. The time will go by and you go, oh my God, I can't believe that that's all you have to do, and it's super fun. Today's class on paper bag method, the book of reference that I'm using today is called So Easy to Preserve. And that's by the University of Georgia. So if you want to go online and purchase that particular book, it has a lot of helpful recipes for science-backed food preservation, and I highly recommend it. So today, for our little project, what we're going to need is a bundle of your herb of choice. I always loop chives into the herb category, but it is in fact not an herb, it's an alum. But I always add it to my herbs because of the aroma. You can use it for soups, you can use it for um, rubs for your chicken. It's one of my go-tos, and the reason why I loop it in is because of its low moisture content, and we'll talk about that very soon. So we'll start off with two things. I have a package of chives that I bought from Walmart fairly recently, last 3 days, I would say, for 59 cents. And I was like, wow, what a deal. And when I got home and I looked in the package, I could tell that some of the chives were heading southward. And so that I wasn't going to be able to use these for cooking. And I was at first very disappointed. But what I remembered is that I could just pick out the bad bits and use the good bits for dehydration. And that's part of what we're going to use today. The other thing that we're going to use today is some mint. Mint grows, if you're a gardener, all you gardeners out there, this is a weed. It grows crazy. And I have more than enough, even this time of year. And before it goes woody, I just decided to pick some for today's demonstration. I like to use it for tea. I like to brew it even for like a hair rinse. Again, we're going to dehydrate it today. Or begin the process so that later you may want to use it as part of your soups, your stews. It just really, your flavor profiles can get really interesting because we're not cooking it and we're preserving maximum amount of flavor. So that's another reason why paper bag method is my favorite. So again, we're using a paper bag. We're using a bundle of your herb of choice. Today we're using chives and mint, and we'll do that separately. You're going to want optional a Sharpie for labeling or an ink pen, something that you can mark your bag with. And you can use, well, my favorite go-to is the hole punch, but you can also use a knife or some scissors, anything that you can use to puncture your bag. And so what you're going to do first is grab your paper bag. And for today's demonstration, I'm just going to do a little hole punch. Like so. And you could say, okay, Mika, why are we doing this? Well, the whole process is to dehydrate, but we don't want to create an environment for mold or moisture and mold to have a party and destroy the whole purpose of us dehydrating in the first place. So we're going to prep our bag and we're making sure that we're aerating, we're creating these air pockets so that we don't have too much humidity in the bag. I'm just going to write mint on my bag with my Sharpie. And though you can't see me writing, there we have it. We have mint. So when you gather your herbs, whether they're from your garden or store-bought, the first thing you have to do is you have to rinse them in cold water. And I know our natural instinct is to rinse in hot water, but the reason why we're not going to rinse in hot water is because hot water would effectively cook your herbs or you would be blanching them, and we don't want to do that. The whole purpose is we want to preserve, but we want to get rid of any dirt or residue from our bundle. So I have some already rinsed in cold water, and this is the calendar they're in. And after rinsing, you want to use a paper towel or a clean kitchen towel, and you want to pat dry and make sure that your bundle is as dry as can be. And again, we're fighting moisture, so that's the whole point. And then you want to grab your mint bundle or your herb bundle, and you're going to place it in your bag like so. And you're going to close it up. Now there's many ways to close it depending on what you have around the house. My first go around, I just used a plain old rubber band, but now that I'm a sophisticated master food preserver, I'm the one with the corny jokes. I just use like a binder clip and I clip it on there. And you're going to leave it in a bag and store it in your a cupboard with some space for about In the summertime, it only takes like 2 to 3 weeks, honestly, for my herbs to dry out. But now that we're getting cooler and we're marching into fall and winter, sometimes you're gonna have to realistically leave it in the bag for like a month. So it's kind of a set it and forget it situation. But once that happens, this is the finished one. This one, I made this like 2 weeks ago. And how did I make this? This is actually some thyme. I bought too much thyme from the farmer's market and I was like, no. So I literally just took the bundle and made my hole punch bag. Also, I'll show you really quickly what a bag can look like if you just use scissors. See like the little aerations on the side? It's something that you can leave air, let the air play around in. But this is my dried thyme. And I'm gonna tell you something. You can't tell from the screen, but it smells so good. And I don't know if you can tell how dry and crispy that is. Like the leaves just fall off. And the cool thing about it is now that it's so dry, I recommend you use like a spice grinder, or you can use like a rolling pin, or sometimes I just crunch it with a spoon. And I can store my spice for when I need it later, like in a Ziploc bag. And so this is also an old mixture. This is also thyme. I have some rosemary and lavender in here. And so this actually, I think in the grocery store right now, if you bought some spice, it would cost you like $6. But I feel like this is a great steal for something that you either have too much of and don't know what to immediately do with, and cost you maybe $3. So another thing you want to consider when you are using your paper bag method is you want to keep it out of the you want to keep it out of the sun. You don't want to over dry it. You don't want to do too much. And I think less is more with this method. And if anybody has any questions, I will be more than happy to answer them.
Yes, so we have a question in the chat. What about hang drying herbs?
Hang drying, so that's considered sun drying, and that's also or sun drying or air drying, and that's looped in to that's herbs and peppers. You can dehydrate peppers that way, but I like the paper bag method because again, I used to have a small apartment and small space, and I didn't necessarily want that hanging. And then I don't know if you notice from the time, but as it dries, even if you're dry hanging it from your in your kitchen or on your patio, it's perfectly fine and safe to do that. But then the leaves are dropping off. And one of my favorite things about the paper bag method is if there's any droppage, it's already in the bag. So you're not losing any product. But totally fine. I don't recommend hang drying, for example, in the winter time, because if it's cold, raining in the morning, it could, if you're storing it outside, drying it outside, it's exposed to the morning moisture. And so you're just looping that process all over again, and you're exposing your product to potential mold and birds and whomever wants to get at your goodies.
There's a question and comment from Anne. I always dehydrated oregano in 30-second bursts in the microwave. Your opinion?
So again, I know that we live in this society where we want quick and easy. If you need it in a hurry, you could, but you have to remember you're cooking it. So I would taste test. Does it taste better, your microwave batch versus something that took time? If you absolutely need to dehydrate it that way, I don't recommend the microwave. I would even prefer the oven at the lowest setting. It takes maybe a few hours, but you're still retaining a lot of that flavor burst that we all expect from our herbs. With a microwave, there's always just the potential that you're going to nuke it and it's just gonna taste like fire. Any other questions?
I actually have a question for you, Minka, if you don't mind me asking, because this is not something I have done, although I do dry herbs a lot. And so have you had, have you have found any challenges with sort of your, I don't know the word I want to use, but kind of like the denser things like chives or green onion? I mean, I know they're not herbs, but again, they sort of fall into that like stuff we dry to flavor our food category.
Yeah,
Are
so
they too wet or do
oh,
they really dehydrate nicely in a bag?
so they do dry nicely, but the word for your onions and your chives, the key word is patience. They can be a little trickier, and that's just because they have a slightly higher moisture content. And so you want to check on these daily for mold, and then if you're spotting mold, you want to pick them out. And again, it's just because they hold more moisture. When you are dehydrating uh, proper herbs like thyme, rosemary, lavender, fennel, mint. That's not as much as a moisture retention, so you don't have to worry as much. But definitely when you are dehydrating chives, you want to check on them daily. Even these, I kept the mint and the chives out at the same time. And as you can see, my chives, even though I pat dried them and wet them at the same time, the chives are still a bit more wet and not yet ready to go in the paper bag.
We have another question in the chat, Mika. Um, do you know about the timing for drying herbs during the summer versus winter in a bag? Is there
Yeah,
a
so
significant
um,
difference?
yes, it can be depending on where you are. I'm based in LA, Southern California. This particular summer, I think, was the coldest summer since 1978. So I would say what I'm used to it taking a week in my paper bag took more like 2 weeks. And this was like between anything that I just chucked in a bag between August and now. For example, my thyme, this took 2 weeks. And now that we're moving into the fall, I recommend 3 weeks to a month or 3 to 4 weeks drying. And the reason for this, and again, the word is patience. And the reason for this is because you really want to make sure that it's absolutely as dry as possible. And I know it's like, oh, but I want my reward now. I get excited too, especially if it's something that we're making with our hands. But the reason we want it to be dry is because we're going to be using it for other purposes. We're going to continue the cycle. We're going to use it on our food. We're going to use it um, on soups, on chicken, on poultry. So we don't want to introduce any new bacteria. We want to make sure that it is dry and usable and safety first. That's it. What else can I say other than that?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mika. That was really good. Appreciate that.
Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed it.
You did. Before we finish this up, I'm actually going to throw in one more since Mika showed us such an easy way to dry herbs. Any of you who have chickens and have ever bought nesting herbs, which are very expensive, things like mint and rosemary do grow like weeds here in California. And so dehydrating like this is such an inexpensive way to use them, even in things like a chicken coop. So if you're a chicken keeper like me and you know what nesting herbs are, they get pricey. So I'm like, I'm gonna try the paper bag. All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I have a couple last things to share with everybody, and then we will let you go. So from this, so we have a few events coming up soon that we'd love to invite you to join. We have a class coming up on October 14th, so that's just in a couple weeks. Pearfection, where we are master food preservers, will show you how to make spice pears and pear leather. And then there's a follow-up to that, a second class on October 25th, to do preserves and pie fillings, which is perfect this time of year. I speak from experience. If you have not had pear pie, you are missing out. Delicious. And then, as always, we offer a monthly Ask a Master Food Preserver Zoom session that's open to the public, where you can join us and just ask us any of your food preservation questions. And we have a panel of Master Food Preservers to answer them. We have changed our date, so we'll be doing this one. In the past, if you have joined us for that, it's always been on a Wednesday night, and we are moving it to Sunday afternoon. So we received several comments from people asking if we can move to the weekend. So we'll be offering that on October 19th from 4 to 5 p.m. and we encourage you to join us. And if you're wondering how to find out about all of these events that we have coming up, and I know in November there'll be some Apple related events and all kinds of things, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter. If you like us and follow us on Facebook, we always announce these things on Facebook, and then also on our Instagram accounts. We encourage you to follow us for the latest updates in food preservation, as well as our upcoming courses that we offer, or public classes that we're offering. Then, if you are somebody who has a passion for food preservation like we do, and also are interested in sharing these things with the public and teaching all the things that Master Food Preservers do, we encourage you to become a Master Food Preserver. We are accepting applications if you want to go, and I believe Mary is going to put this in the chat, but also you can see the QR code here on the screen with all the information you need to become a Master Food Preserver if you think you're interested. And you can also, this is, if you Google how to become a UC Master Food Preserver, it'll take you also right to our site. But we are accepting applications. I think now through November, we'll be accepting applications, and the training, if you're accepted, starts in, I believe, January of 2026. So if this is something that you've always wanted to do, well, there's no time like the present. So we encourage you to join us. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. When you depart, you're going to get a short survey, and I know that you've given us an hour of your time today to share something we're passionate about, and I appreciate that. But if we could get just a few more minutes of your time, and if you could fill out that survey, your feedback is really helpful to us. We take it very seriously, and we use it to try to continue to improve the types and the quality of the programs we offer to you. So if you could take a few minutes and fill out that survey, we'd really, really appreciate it. With that, thank you for your time and your interest. Happy preserving. And I think we have like 8 minutes. We can hang out. If any of you have any last questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, that concludes our program for today. So again, thank you for joining us. And thank you to Renee and Earl and Mika. I really appreciate your time today and putting these great programs together for everybody. And I'm totally serious, Mika, about the chicken thing, because I have been dehydrating herbs. I've like paid money for herbs for the chicken coop. And when you mentioned, that essentially mint is like a weed, I was like, why not? It's like, I have a paper bag. And of course, again, mint growing everywhere I don't want it to grow. So
Right.
it's like a double, I can literally pull out something that I don't want and then also dehydrate and throw it in the chicken coop. I don't
Yeah,
know.
my two are mint and rosemary. It's just like, God, it never ends.
Yeah, you can't get rid of it. It's like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I know my grandmother, this is like a random story for people, but she used to talk about how when she moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, she had this rosemary plant that she and my grandfather, after World War II, drove. She had a plant in a pot on her lap, and she carried it all the way from Pennsylvania to California, this rosemary, and kept it, the temperature, all this stuff. She was like, to keep this plant alive. And then and I quote, said she got here and it was like weeds. And she was so
Yep.
mad because it was just everywhere. And my grandpa was always really resentful because he was like, you made me carry that plant across the country. And then they, could never get rid of it. So, but yeah, it's everywhere. We love it. We love it. It's good for the bees. It's good for the bees.
Back.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask for us? Again, we have a couple minutes we can spare for you.
Yes, Marilyn's asking if this presentation will be able to watch later. Is that going to be on the website page?
Yes, yes, this will be, we post all of our, if you go to the, I'm gonna stop my share here. If you go to our UCANR webpage, and the past classes, I don't know, Mary, are you able to find the link for that? We can post it for you, but yeah, we post all our classes on
Yes,
the
I'm working on
UCANR.
that.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. On the UCANR website, so you can watch it later. Absolutely. The only thing that, as far as I know, and someone feel free to correct me, that we don't post online are Ask a Master Food Preserver. The rest of them are posted after the fact. Well, Mary looks for that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything you've tried? Oh, I see there's another thing in Q&A.
There's a question on white
oh.
vinegar.
Yes, you can absolutely use, somebody asked, can I use
Right.
5% white vinegar when making a flavored vinegar? Absolutely.
Yes, right.
I personally prefer white vinegar because it doesn't bring any additional flavor to the party. You get, I think, a more pure herb flavor, but I think it's a matter of taste. Earl, would you agree with that?
I think so, yeah. White vinegar comes off of the starches in wheat, corn, things like that.
And then Marina, are the culinary use of dried rosemary that you like better than just using it fresh? I will tell you, Marina, my favorite use personally, it's not really the dried leaf of the rosemary. I do take the time to collect the flowers off of rosemary. The flowers off of rosemary, which are usually white or pink or purple, they're quite pretty. They're very delicate and tiny. And they have a rosemary flavor, but not as strong as the leaf. And I dehydrate, I gather them because I have it, again, it's growing like weeds in my yard. And I like to dehydrate it and I save it and I put it in things like compound butters or just to like sprinkle across a steak to make my food look fancy on a cheese platter. But that's one of my favorite uses of rosemary. And then dried rosemary is great to have. Again, it's in the wintertime, those hearty soups and stews and um, that flavor of rosemary to me just kind of says like winter cooking. And I know people use rosemary. I don't know of any evidence for this, but I know that there's anecdotal discussion about rosemary being a natural pest repellent. So I know there are people who hang dried rosemary to keep, insects away. But I have no evidence that that's actually true. But the worst thing that happens is it smells good. So what do you have to lose?
There's one more question. I don't know if we answered, but how about using white wine vinegar as long as it's 5% acidity?
Yes.
Yeah, the key is that 5% acidity. That's really the key,
Yeah.
is if the label actually says 5%. You can find rice vinegars that are at 5%, wine vinegars that are at 5%, but that's the magic number. And sometimes people hear that and think, oh, so 7% must be even better. Keep in mind that when things become more acidic, then you can start actually breaking down. 5% is the percent acidity that these things have been tested at. So you don't want to dissolve your basil in vinegar. Or maybe you do. I don't know. Let's see here, Marina. Manuela mentioned using bay leaves for insect repellent, keeping fruit flies from bananas. I'm gonna have to try that. I have a bay laurel. Maybe I'll see about drying my own bay leaves. Thank you for sharing that with us, Manuela. That's a great comment. And then Marina also made a comment about any other herb flowers you could preserve, like mint and oregano. As far as I'm aware, most of the flowering herbs, the flowers are edible. Trying to think, with the herbs, that's true. Not all flowers, we don't eat, are edible, but the herb flowers. Dill, I preserve, I do dry, actually, I'm thinking about it, I dry dill heads and use them in canning, because sometimes my dill and my pickling don't fully align when the dill bolts, but I will dry dill heads. I don't know if anybody else has done anything like that, and I have to apologize, you can hear reveille going in the background here. You guys done that? Renee or Earl, have you ever, Mika, have you ever dried the, like the flowers or the, like dill head or things like that?
No.
No, I have not.
Yeah. I know I do it with dill, but I haven't, I'm trying to think. I don't know why you couldn't though. I don't know why you couldn't. I will tell you that picking the rosemary flowers, it's great. It's a little tedious. And that's probably why more of us haven't done it. Great. If we don't have, oh, somebody, Manuela, again, thank you. So the oregano flowers are stronger than the leaves. That's actually interesting. I would not have expected that. So that's good to know. Actually, so we want to use those in a smaller quantity maybe than you would if you were doing the leaves. Excellent. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and close our program. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and I hope to see you at our upcoming events.